welcome to Against All Odds, another program that is dedicated at making sure we showcase survivor stories. And today's story is all about taking a second chance. Now, sometimes in society, we have this tendency of not wanting to forgive those who would have wronged us or would have done wrong. And we always think that they're always going to remain to be the same person, the person who disappointed us, the person who can never grow, the person who you think, I don't think they can change. But today's story is definitely different, an exciting one. And I'm so excited to be joined by a broadcaster by profession, as we know him. His name is Oscar Pambuka, and he's here to share his story with us. Oscar, thank you so much for joining us.
You know what? We always feel good when you invite us at such platforms. Thank you, Rachel.
I'm excited. Listen, you can still sound like you're a broadcaster, and it sounds great.
Good
to see you. You look very well.
I'm also happy to be here. It's a very new environment altogether.
And great.
Yeah.
Oscar.
Okay.
I mean, people have read about you in the newspapers, on social media.
Oh, yes.
And a lot has happened. You started off as a broadcaster. Let's just take you way back then. Broadcaster.
Okay, during that moment, as a broadcaster, I felt like I was Superman. It was the greatest moment of my life. Those 16 years, news, doing all sorts of those current affairs programs. It was just like a momentous feeling, I should say. And it all vanished away.
Now, you just said that it all vanished away. Let's talk about how it vanished and how it started, the journey to your downfall. Jakatanga say, because you were, like you said, you were married. Then Oscar, he's now divorced. Let's talk about that first.
Okay, with all due respect, I'll try to protect the privacy of the other party. But basically, it was irreconcilable differences. So during that moment when I broke down, I fell in love with a new kind of demon, to say.
All right.
And this demon was drug abuse now.
Okay.
So I associated myself with drugs as a way of trying to cushion the pain I was going through during that moment.
What drugs were you into at that time? What was the first, if I know you remember this, the first time you tried a particular drug? If you can tell us what drug it was and any other drugs that you used at that time so that you could cushion the pain, like you said.
You know what? And I'm speaking to you who's got a problem of addiction. I started with those cough mixtures, Brongo. From Brongo, we went to Mbanje. From Mbanje, I went to Skunk. And after Skunk, I went to the dangerous demon I'm talking about, Mutoriro. So you see that walk. The addictions continue to call you up from one level to the next level, to the next level. So if it wasn't my arrest, I could have gone to the heroin level or to the cocaine levels. So I thank God for the intervention. I thank the Zimbabwe Prisons and Correctional Service for arresting Oscar Pambuka. Because if Oscar Pambuka was not arrested, he could have been dead by now.
These are about 5 drugs that you actually tried out, if you look at them, and you're saying that you tried them in phases. Bronco, did you realize that, maybe Bronco wasn't doing it anymore for me? I needed something high. Is that how you escalated until you got to Mutoriro?
That is why we say, Chiro, anatwabam, no matter what kind of drug, whether it's glue, madaipaere, whatever it is, it will lead you to the next level. That is why one should desist from drugs. Because the addiction, unotanga uchita cough mixture, for example, then you become used to it. It becomes part of your DNA. Then you will say, okay, let me go to the next level. And on and on and on and on and on and on and on. So it's a very satanic world, the world of drugs. It is through God's intervention that you can come out of it. Without that, vazhinji vabuda, vaenda nemutoriro nokupengereka nemadrugs, they will never return.
All right. I also want to talk about the fact that a lot happened. You say that, using drugs, and we heard a lot about Oscar. Auntie, takazombonzwa kuti Oscar zvaarikuita zvemadrugs, Oscar kazombopinda futi zvemuchechi. Panguva yacho iyoyo pawakapinda zvemuchechi, waiita here zvemadrugs?
This is also reaching out to those people known. It is difficult for a person known to communicate the inner feelings to the next person, especially if those issues are to do with their personality. For example, it was difficult for me to tell someone that I'm experiencing marriage problems. It was difficult for me to tell someone that okay, I've got a problem of addiction. So as personalities or as popular people, we tend to go solo. And that is where the danger is. We are not go-bots or computers, remember. So ignoring the aspect of sharing is one catastrophe which leads especially to depression. And once you are depressed, if you don't get any remedy, it's either you go to the downside, which is drugs. And this is what Oscar went through. And I'm saying to you, it was a very, very, very dangerous world.
You went through depression.
Yes.
Now varume tinonzwa musociety because hanza varume hakuna chinhu chinonzi depression pavarume. Murume anofanira kushinga. Ndozvatinoziva. That's what we know. That's what we're taught in society. That there's no man who can say this is a tough time for me. As a man you have to be strong and you have to soldier on. And you're saying that you went through depression. Was the depression caused by, your marital problems? Was your depression caused by financial problems? What caused your depression exactly?
One of the effects of drug abuse is it eats up your finances. You destroy a lot of relations. You lose a lot of contacts and networks. So that causes a lot of intellectual torture. So it really caught up with me as well, to the extent that I was just waking up, playing music and smoking my lungs out. The Oscar Pambuka, that newsreader, look at what he was now doing, spending most of his time blowing up the pipe.
So you talked about the drugs being, a financial strain. How much would you spend on drugs? Roughly, approximately in a day. How much would you spend on drugs or in a week?
Okay, in a week I would say, let's say 300.
300 USD?
$300 US.
Now Oscar waisenzera rope mari yacho iyoyo kuzoti uwane kutenga madrugs $300 per week.
You see what I'm saying? So this is the danger. That's why we are saying zero tolerance to drugs, because once that appetite is there, it will lead you to look for money using any sort of means. Dosaka mchona kuti most of these drug users or drug victims, most of them commit a lot of crimes. Unlawful entries, kutengesa zvinu mumba. You see what happens with these addictions. So in my case, it's fortunate enough that I had some resources which I was making through weddings and so on. So after doing functions, you see, that voice would call you, smoke me. And that voice is very pertinent amongst users. Voice chikwambo, chinoda isolation, chinoda restructuring. Because uriwega, pauri papo, it's a difficult journey. It needs support from the family to begin with, the society, and I had the greatest society, the prison. Ku prison uchipinda wakasekwa wegonodzoka pa position. I entered prison and they could see that this is not the Oscar they knew. Something was different because ndakapinda netuma oi.
Etata kuziva.
Mchiri kuziva video ndakapfeka zveblue netuma oi so. That is how I entered prison. So people were shocked.
What is that the person?
Is that Oscar?
All right.
And yeah.
Well, we're going to take a short break,
okay.
And we're talking to Oscar Pambuka, and he's narrating how he actually got into drugs. Imagine being hooked from one drug to the other. Akatanga iri bronco, the cough mixture, went on to banje, which is marijuana, escalated all the way to the point of mutoriro. He even tried skunk, and yeah, you can say that's quite a lot. When we come back from the break, let's talk about the look that he now had. Tuma oi tuya pakazopinda kuita pasta. Uyezve pakazosungwa kuti akasungirwe. This is Against All Odds. Don't you go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back to Against All Odds. We continue with Oscar Pambuka's story as he narrates how he got addicted to drugs. Now imagine escalating from one drug to the other, and he's now saying that I became a different man. Now Oscar, you say that you became a different man. Obviously your persona changed because one got German drugs. I want to know about some of the side effects, from the drug abuse that you used to have, because you're a survivor now. What were some of the side effects awaisangana now pakushandisa ma drugs? Maybe ukataura kana iri mbanje, what was for mbanje, what was for bronco, what was for skunk? Skunk chi, if you can explain that as well.
Okay. Mtoriro, I'll start with Mtoriro. Kumba ana gogo, ana sekuru, ana mama, ana baba. makaona kaplastic kanoita kunge salt yemagolo kane mwana, take it very very seriously. Ndo zvinoita mutoriro izvozvo. Mutoriro ndouya unoputwa nebhaubhu, tumabhaubhu tunotengeswa mushopu tuya. Mukaona mwana kana kuti kutiona turi mumba, you should be very very skeptical, because achingosveta hutsuya kamwe chete ndobva ndatoti mahwana atanga. That is the beginning of horror. It is the genesis of evil manifestation. Chichinotanga kuitika, you start forgetting very simple things. You can forget that today it's a Monday, you can forget it's a Tuesday, you forget the dates. Number 2, you become very unproductive. Most of your time you just want to sit. And you see most of these people who eat these drugs, they are just sitting by the corners, sitting by a lot of these bases where they sell these unscrupulous products. What also happens, you sweat a lot, profusely. That is what started happening. Headaches also appear. My headaches are very strong, so good for 3 days. You see what I'm saying? Loss of appetite, which is the most dangerous of all. That's why you see that drug users, they grow thin. You see what I'm saying? Whilst outside, before I started drugs, I was at 71 kgs. Before I was arrested on the 19th of January, and that's Zikira to 51. You see what I'm saying?
That's a lot. That's a lot.
You see?
That's a lot of loss there.
So if it wasn't the arrest, Oscar could have been a bygone.
Yeah. Okay, so those are some of the effects.
Those are some of the effects, yeah.
All right. Then, Pawakazotanga Church, wongotchiri kuita madrugs, I presume.
You know, that was a social media type of communication. Maybe, you know what, on my platforms.
When you say communication, was it a cry out because something is wrong? Is that
I
what
think
you're saying?
people were talking to me using a certain way, semantically. Kuti Oscar, look at what you're doing, but they could not say it directly. So they epitomized the issue of the church to bring me back to order. Do you get what I mean?
Oscar, was that the case?
Yeah.
But you were the one who started the church.
It wasn't a church.
What was it?
It's just sharing God's word. You don't need to be a prophet to share God's word.
All right.
We can just share.
We can just share.
Yeah.
So that's what you were doing.
So people thought otherwise.
But for you, it was sort of an outcry because you knew something was going on within you and something wasn't right.
Something wasn't right. And by that time, I was going to a certain church. And okay, I'll not blame anyone.
Yeah.
But there are certain churches, akakurisa. They don't have time one-on-one with the congregants.
Yeah.
So it can be a disadvantage at times.
All right. Now, let's talk about how you got arrested. Why did you get arrested? Takazunguzwa Oscar Asungu.
Okay.
But akasungirwe Oscar.
Oscar did not go to Harare Central Prison for drugs. No. He went into prison for a case involving a private company, the Fruitful Communications. They got to enter into an agreement with the Zimbabwe Power Company to do advertising work. So according to the court system, zvainzi isusu hatina kuita through the legal means. Asi ndinotenda Mwari kuti zvakazoonekwa, it was found out later that these guys did nothing and we are acquitted and discharged. Ndokubuda kwandakazoita. Saka izvo handichazvitarisa izvo. It's a bygone because I was acquitted and discharged. Mupabatisi seZimbabwe. Ndotenda Mwari, I was acquitted and discharged.
I want to talk about when you went to prison. I'm sure at that time you were actually addicted to drugs, mostly mutoriro, because you say that you were now at that level.
Yeah.
Now, wakupinda prison. In prison, you have no access to drugs at all. This is a rehabilitation center for you to reform. Now, the withdrawal symptoms, wajaira to be smoking mutoriro, and now you don't have it at your disposal. What were some of the withdrawal symptoms that you went through?
But the fortunate, that is why I congratulate the prison system, because kudara yenzi Zimbabwe Prison Service ndokwaifa nikoko ndokwairowa vanhu ikoko zvichita today it's called the Zimbabwe Prisons and Correctional Service. So remember I told you that whilst outside I was lacking sleep. We would be awake for 2 weeks without even closing your eyes. In prison we began to sleep for 17 hours. Imagine we sleep from 3 p.m. to 6 a.m. So all that time, the lost sleep is being recovered.
waitorara here Oscar
Andairara manje.
aiwa jatsotaura ma first days wainyatsorara kunyatsobata hope dzinyatsobata kana kuti waitozombomuka
Okay,
wona
yeah, no,
kuti
no, okay,
aiwa
I'd say the first 2 weeks.
eh
The first 2 weeks, I would wake up in the morning, 6 o'clock, and ndotanga ngofamba. Okay, you'll be overloaded with addiction. Wakafamba uko. I did that continuously. Vanhu vachitoseka. Asi vanenge vachiseka vachiti uchadzikama zvako ndokuevaporata kwarinoita. I salute the prison because drugs are not allowed. They never enter into those territories. That played a big part in the restoration of my health. Psychosis. A drug user can never tell kuti akupenga. Only the people who are seeing him can tell kuti something is wrong with Oscar. So Oscar can deny kuti pamwe nasingapenge, but no, pamwe wakutopenga. You see? So there's a lot of resistance to drug users. Unongo singado kuudzirwa. You are very much egoistic. So in prison, there's nothing like that. We stay together. There's nothing to hide. It's an open system. You've got also testimonies of people who pass through what you're passing through. They told us now, they started to, give us some psychological support, emphasizing that with a diet of beans and this sleep, I'll be all right after 6 months. And definitely after 6 months, it took me 6 months for the drug to evaporate from the system. Saka mtoriro wauri kurova nhasi uri kumba. Chero wakati wapedza. No. It is in the blood system for a period of 6 months. You see, that is where the danger is. This affects the liver, this affects the kidney, this affects the brain cells as well.
Well, as you can hear Oscar narrating his story, and he's saying that some of the symptoms he actually faced were a result of the withdrawal of him using drugs. Azopinda prison. Achifamba, imagine, kumukana 2 uchifamba, most probably he'll do 3 hours achifamba, kushuka umamudza kuti aiwa takambofamba nzira iyoyo. We've been on that path before. Uchadzikama hako. Beans dzauchadya ndodzichakudzikamisa. Uyezve kurara kwako kuyakwe ndokuchaita kuti drugs evaporate in the system. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk to Oscar, and now he's all about helping others who are walking his previous path and who are actually considering it, and also people who want to walk away from it. And when we come back from the break, let's talk about the restoration that he's come through with, and all about the second chance that he's now taking advantage of. This is Against All Odds. Don't you go anywhere. Welcome back to Against All Odds. Now, we were talking to Oscar Pambuka, and he was narrating his story where through his marital problems, he went through depression. And after going through depression, he decided to embark, or should we say, use drugs as a coping mechanism for him. That being said, it wasn't an uphill at all, as he started off with bronco, known as cough syrup as well, all the way to mutoriro. And that being said, he then decided to use his funds and would spend roughly about $300 a week. Financially, he also became depressed because he was spending all his money on drugs. Nonetheless, he decided to open a church, should we say? Not really, but to share the word. It was sort of an outcry for him to get help until he actually went to prison. And there, the rehabilitation started. He didn't get arrested because of drugs. He did get involved in other things, and that landed him in prison. However, prison was his scapegoat because the prison itself helped him elevate and get the drugs out of his system. He said the walking up and down for hours, staying up at night at first, and also being ziadzia, at the end of it all, after 6 months, he was totally a renewed person. I'm now a new person. Now let's talk about that restoration, Oscar Pambuka.
Yeah, that was, I would say, the greatest gift I've ever received since I came into being, because remember, I told you that immediately, once inside the Zimbabwe prisons, this became a fundamental change. Why? Because the word of God is spoken every single hour. So whether unombotanga uchignore but uchasvika panzvimbo. So it was that which played a part in the restoration. Number two, there's a lot of discipline within the prison system. This made me calm down, because uko wakapaparika college kako unoiswa muorder. So that authority, the respect for authority, helped me and made me realize, where was I going with my life? What is happening here? So you become sober, you introspect and find the true you. And I was so dismayed with what I was seeing a drunkard, seeing the Oscar Pambuka now twisting his hair. Those images were now coming whilst I was in prison. And I was saying to myself, my way, unakwandasvika manjoko. So uruku college, that's when you write down the notes. And God's voice began to speak to me. Because in India, I Psalms. I used to read the Psalms in college. So Psalms speak in the deep heart. They motivate you. They tell you to go forward. Psalms speak of the restoration, restoring your life, come back to life, return to the Lord. Those were the words I was now adhering to while in college. And that's when the restoration process began. Slowly but surely, I began to officiate at anti-drug awareness campaigns within the prison service. It started in Mutoko. You saw us with my TT and the rest of the other prison inmates, Domboshawa, Kuwadzana, Chitungwiza, and that gathered so much of my time and my affinity. Ndakanakidzwa nazo kuti zveshuwaka ndapiwa mukana naMwari to kuti ndidzidziso uyo ari kuenda kuchikoro uyo muteenager uyo muyouth uyo ari kurova madrugs aya kuti ona inini mushamarari ndakatombosvika pakuverenga news dzenyika ona mararamiro andakuita mutarise zvaita Oscar. Saka ukaita zvekurova madrugs ka unopengereka. It was very fortunate kuti amuna kuzosangana Oscar kureos akatakura zvidhina ndaitokutema nematombo ainasina kubatsirwa neJerry. Tanda kutoenda pakusvika pakupenga. Saka madrugs anopengesa. So the restoration process began whilst there. And those opportunities were so much. I began to, because the prison system gave me an opportunity to be on radio. Ndakasungwa. Kubuda pa TV. Ndakasungwa. Kutana nevana vechikoro. Ndakasungwa. So these are the guys who started to restore my broadcasting affinity. Ndichiri muJerry. Ndakati ndichiripo, because ku college vaindudza kuti uripo kayo. Oscar sadaro kana. Oscar sati nyadzise. Oscar dzoka panzvimbo. So those voices.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And ndosaka nchiti college kawo. Kwaka kunorwadza. But ichikoro chekuti wakapfura napo audi kudzoka kwakapinda mashure. Inandidzokere kuma drugs.
No. I actually wanted to say, do you think that since wakabuda reading Oscar?
Ndakabuda Muswa 10 March.
Muswa 10 March. Auntie, tamuna May. Do you think pane kamwe kanomboda kubata mukuza? Sometimes you hear these voices go what do you go try and be jana foot? Do you hear those voices anymore?
Just imagine, I stayed for 1 year in prison without eating mutoriro, without eating mbanje. Ukona kuti affinity yabviswa. What am I focusing now on? I'm focusing on eating. Both ndawonda nakurwa banana chikafu zvekudaro. My investment is now in food, which was the thing I was supposed to do. Each guy panokurwa drugs aya, because the drugs eat up the carbohydrates, proteins. Unopesa wa skeleton ka. Wambona mna ni 22 years achitange mna ni 62. Mutoriro. Those are the effects. Dabuda muJerry, guess what? Talking about the restoration, I was identified by one important figure in Zimbabwe. Dinotenda amai venyika, Dr. Osilia Mnangagwa. She then said, I was listening and monitoring you from afar. I think it's vital that we work together and you tell the youths about these dangers because you've been through it. I salute her for that because it's a very serious issue, Yema drugs, which is affecting Zimbabwe. And me being robbed in by Amai. Mama, if you're watching, God bless you.
I gotta say that it's quite remarkable. It's a second chance that
It's a
you've been
second
given, Oscar. It's a second chance. And second chances, don't come third, fourth time. They only come once. Because that's why it's called a second chance. You're given the first one, now it's a second, and you're taking advantage of it. Let's talk about, I understand that you have a foundation that's there that also helps. What is the foundation about, and what does it help with?
The restoration is one line of thought for the faithful. It's a walk of the faithful, the positive-minded. Those who are serious about developing Zimbabwe. Those who are not looking at their challenges. Muna asiri kuzvishora, ndo nyaya yerestoration yatiri kutaura. Restoration tiri kuti gadzirisa pese pakaipa pauri. Une makuwa, unoba, unoponda, unoita gombo mumba panzi. Izvozvo murestoration tenchititi uri wega zvako, tarisa pese pauri kutadza, wokumbira Mwari kuti akubatsire. That is what the restoration is all about. We give people platforms to share their stories, because the most important of all things is to hear a one-on-one story from a person who has been through a thing. So the foundation is a lot of people who are coming through. Some are focusing on AIDS issues, some are focusing on cancer issues, a lot of issues, but all gathered under restoration. The restoration, maybe some people think it's a word. No, this is a godly word. It's not a Mickey Mouse word. Yeah? It's a godly word, meaning to retake what was taken by the devil. Your time might have been stolen by the devil. Indakabirwa nguva ninyaya yemadrugs, ndakabirwa pfuma ninyaya yemadrugs, ndakabirwa mudzimai nenyaya yezvakaitika izvozvo. Saka takada kuzvirestore.
Oh, that's
restoration.
amazing.
That's about amazing. It, and it's affecting you and me.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it, Oscar Pambuka telling us his story. We're so excited to have him here today on Against All Odds. And he just narrated where he started off. Remember, he felt like a superstar. He felt untouchable. As for I need a broadcaster, I have it all, until drugs destroyed him. However, going to prison and having the correctional services offered to him helped him come out a better person, having a second chance. And that's what Against All Odds is all about. We appreciate these stories. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Rachel Mwenyeheli, and like Oscar said, it's all about restoration. Make sure you do good for yourself. Until next time, do take care.